Okay, it is Labor Day travel weekend. It's upon us now, and it's going to be a little less expensive, apparently, than some of our earlier summer road trips. I'm joined by Patrick DeHaan. He is our gas price guru with GasBuddy and GasBuddy.com. Patrick, I think the big question is, summertime gas prices traditionally tend to be a little pricier anyway. What is it that's, really been starting to drive prices down?
I think a lot of it is tied to concerns over the economy in recent weeks. We've seen the national average now decline for 11 straight weeks, really on the heels of the Federal Reserve, which had started raising interest rates more aggressively earlier this summer. The thinking is that, increasing the interest rates is going to slow down the economy and could send it into a recession, thereby reducing oil demand. When the economy slows down, Americans don't spend as much, they don't get out as much, and that impacts oil demand in a negative way. So that's largely been behind the big decline that we've been seeing. In addition, demand has been declining for the last few weeks as Americans get back to the grind. Schools have reopened, and that's reducing demand. Also, China continuing to fight COVID by shutting down and locking down cities, which also destroys oil demand. And with that, oil prices have plummeted. The wholesale price of gasoline has plummeted, and gas prices at the retail level in Seattle now are back onto the $5 a gallon mark at about $4.91 a gallon.
I know it is welcome relief. In fact, I saw one as I was out and about this morning that was $4.47 a gallon. I can remember complaining about that price, and now now we've kind of gotten used to it, and it's again it looks like relief. So as people, and there are people, as I understand it, that are going to be hitting the road one more time, one last blast of summer. What can they expect when they get out there on the road?
Well, prices should be moderately declining through the course of the weekend. In fact, looking at Seattle, I'm already seeing a few stations, 3 stations in the Seattle metro area that are under $4 a gallon. We should continue to see prices falling through the weekend. We are looking at an average of $4.91 per gallon as we approach Labor Day. I think that could decline another 25 to 50 cents a gallon between now and October, so long as there are no unexpected outages or major hurricanes.
And that brings up another good question, Patrick. One hurricane can really do a number on oil prices, can't it?
Yeah, it certainly can, especially depending on if that hurricane heads into the Gulf of Mexico. That's really where the concern goes up. A major hurricane like a Category 3 or stronger targeting in an area between Houston and New Orleans could cause shutdowns of several major refineries. Of course, it was Hurricane Harvey that shut down about a third of U.S. refining capacity. And now we are at a time where gasoline supplies are considerably tighter than then. So we still are not out of the woods completely when it comes to gas prices.
Okay, so I was taking a look at sort of the county by county, your GasBuddy Heat Map, which is great on GasBuddy.com. And at first I had to chuckle because I'm originally from California, and California is pretty much all bright yellow, which means it's still very expensive. But one of the things that stuck out to me is a considerable difference in a short distance here in Washington State. Like in King County, the average listed was 481, and I want to say Pierce County was down at like 457, and then just up the road in Skagit County, all of it along the I-5 corridor, they're as low as 425 on average. What is it that drives such stark differences in such a short distance?
Well, as prices have come down, stations can pass along the decrease in price as quickly or as slowly as they like. In some areas, there may be a competition that's more aggressive in lowering prices to try and win off the motorists that are going down the highway. So it's all really just a business agenda decision, that is to lower prices quicker or slower. Now, in addition, there are some interesting dynamics in Washington State. Much of Western Washington is supplied by refineries in Seattle and into California. The eastern half of the state supplied by refineries that connect into the Rocky Mountains. And so there's really kind of a big change between where gasoline is coming from when you talk about Western Washington versus Eastern.
And in that sense, it really, I think, all comes down to the cost of shipping it, the distance, and that sort of thing, right?
Well, it's very unique because the gasoline that heads into Eastern Washington comes from another region, essentially. And so there can be differences in refining activity by region. And there can be big differences between the region that supplies Eastern Washington and the region that supplies Western Washington. So normally they're pretty close, but there can be subtle but significant differences. If, for example, California's refineries are having issues, that will pull prices higher in Western Washington while potentially not even touching Eastern Washington.
That is indeed a fascinating dynamic. Another thing I was thinking about leading up to our discussion, Patrick, was, when you see prices shoot up the way they have, there's always that talk, and I know not to defend big oil, but there's always that talk of, oh, well, this is a situation happening and the major oil companies are taking advantage and there's gouging. How much of that do you think is really going on versus people's perception of it?
Well, I think people's perception is mostly inaccurate, and I think people just have different definitions of gouging. People may not like prices when they go up to $3, $4, $5 a gallon, but that doesn't mean that that is the definition of gouging. Simply high prices does not necessarily mean a station is gouging. Really, I think the only ones that might be able to determine what gouging is people that know what the station is paying and know what they're selling for. And very few people like that exist. So, I sit here and I watch the wholesale price of gasoline and can see approximately what the station pays and what they sell it for. But so many eyes are focused on gas stations simply for the potential to gouge that gas stations would be extremely foolish to try and pull something like that off, knowing that politicians are salivating at the thought of prosecuting a station that's charging too much.
So on the other side of that too, I mean, I know stations, and I've heard before that, gas stations, part of the reason they switched from, having garages to mini marts is because, they only make maybe a penny or two a gallon profit on the gas they're selling. And so in order to make money, they sell snacks and drinks and that side of things. But, with the oil companies themselves, when the price per barrel shoots up, that's not supposed to affect us for weeks at a time, but then we see the prices at the pump go up right away. How much do the oil companies themselves play into the nature of that fluctuation in gas prices?
Not very much at all. Oil companies have no say in prices, and that's why for the last 11 weeks, prices have been coming down. Oil companies don't set prices, the market does. Just like when you sell your home, you don't just name whatever price you want. Your house may or may not sell if you do that. Oil companies are subject to the overall conditions of the economy, the market, and that's what dictate prices. I think in what you suggested there with raising prices faster, there's a lot of confusion on the consumer level. Consumers look at oil prices, but they may not understand what they could be looking at. It could be futures prices, it could be spot prices, it could be wholesale prices. They may look only when prices are going up. They may only watch it when prices are going down. But really, from coast to coast, we've never seen a major legal challenge to this. Or at least I should say, never a successful legal challenge, because the system, as we have it designed, or as it has been designed, is the best system we have. That is, oil companies, they make profit when there is scarcity of their product, when prices are higher, when there's less oil in the market. But that doesn't mean that they're having an influence in the price. So I think a lot of consumers. Oil companies have been villainized because of consumers, I think, misunderstanding of how markets work, and that oil markets are very similar to housing markets. There can be drastic imbalances. That's why the cost of the median home in America is up significantly in the last 2 years. Very much the similar reasons why oil prices are so much higher in the last 2 years, because there's so many people looking to buy homes and oil, and there's simply not enough people selling homes and also oil.
Okay, so you touched on it early in our conversation, so I want to round out by asking you what you expect to see, not so much in the short term, but longer term as we head into winter and maybe even into the early part of next year in terms of gas.
I think I think moving forward, as long as we can avoid something like a major outage or hurricane, I think prices in Seattle will continue to fall. I think really that'll be true across much of the country. Prices could fall another 15 to 40 cents a gallon by Halloween. And as long as there are no changes to geopolitical tensions or massive curveballs when it comes to refineries and supply and demand, I think we will continue to see prices moderate. But keep in mind, this is a very sensitive market, and basically the world changes on a daily basis. So it's more a function of will we continue to get lucky breaks? Will the economy continue to moderate over the next couple of months? That's really what we need to see lower prices at the pump stick around.
All right, very good. Patrick DeHaan with GasBuddy, as always, we appreciate your expertise. Thanks for that.
Thanks for having me.